My name is Nkemdilim Uwaje Begho. I'm the CEO of Futuresoft, and I would first of all like to wish you a happy new year. Welcome to 2023. I hope it exceeds your expectations and is everything that you've sort of dreamt of, especially when it comes to sort of your digital journey. As is our tradition here at Futuresoft, I usually kick off our first lunch and learn of the year, discussing digital trends for that particular year that is upcoming. And obviously, so today we're going to talk about digital trends in 2023. And I think 2023 is super exciting for me because I think there's been a lot of very exciting things happening in the digital and technology space throughout 2022. I think there've been very sort of defining moments that have really created sort of indicators in terms of where digital is headed. Some of those moments are, Facebook renaming their company name to Meta. This is a clear indication that the Metaverse is going to go mainstream. It's also a clear indication that this journey is going to be supported by big tech. And it also means that smaller players have the opportunity to sort of scale much faster and leverage those bigger players through mergers and acquisitions, through sort of opening up their APIs to those bigger players for different types of services within the Metaverse. So I think it's a really interesting, sort of development that we've seen. And I think it's also one of those things that requires a lot of additional sort of computing power, which means that when you look at, sort of quantum computing and the type of chips that have come out in 2022, you're also seeing really, really interesting and very exciting, things that we'll talk a little bit about today. Another exciting thing that I think everybody's talking about right now is ChatGPT. Came out in Q4 2022, pretty much went mainstream then, and it's having big tech, especially search giants, shaking in their boots and really rethinking the investments that they need to do. It's got $1 billion investment from Microsoft, which is huge, and just means that that type of technology is here to stay, and we'll see much more of it. And obviously, it means that it changes everything, right? It changes how you do your research, it changes how you engage, it changes how students write their essays, or even how you write your blog posts and articles. It means that you can create content much faster. It means that you can use it for so many different things. And that's not the only AI that is sort of disrupting digital and marketing as a whole. So let's jump right in. I've sort of created 5 different areas that I want to talk about today. The first one is the evolution of digital marketing. So what are the things that we're going to see in digital marketing in 2023? What are the trends that are going to continue? What are the things that are going to discontinue? We're also going to talk about brand strategy and how brand strategy is sort of taking center stage. And if you've followed any of our masterclasses or lunch and learn sessions in 2022, you'll know that this is one of the subjects that we really talk about a lot, because we're seeing a massive shift in terms of how brands are actually strategically, engaging and how the brand is driving business. Then we'll talk about data-driven strategies and how they're no longer nice to haves. I think data is just becoming bigger and bigger, right? 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. That alone should tell you the type of, sort of things that we're going to see around data and how important it should be to your organization. And then there's the Metaverse. I already talked about that. So Metaverse, mixed reality, Web3, they're here to stay. What does that mean for your organization? Do you have a Metaverse strategy? How are you approaching that? Or is that something that's not even on your radar? And last but not least, we're going to talk about technology and digital transformation trends. So these are more trends that are focused on Africa and the continent. So not really from that sort of global perspective, but more from a local perspective and what, your organizations here on the continent should be looking out for. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's next, right? So let's jump in, and we'll start with the evolution of digital, where we're going to talk a little bit about What are the trends that we're seeing in this space? How is AI, sort of being integrated into marketing? What does consumer engagement look like in 2023? And what does search look like in 2023, especially with regards to SEO, search engine optimization? So digital marketing is evolving, right? No one can, sort of deny that. We're seeing that there's sort of a reinforcement of the role of social media marketing. It's not going anywhere. You have to invest in it across the various different channels. Gen Z is obviously loving TikTok, which means that if you have a cross-generational audience that includes Gen Z, you really need to think about how you engage on that channel, right? And how you tailor your content for each of the different channels and the stakeholders and generational audiences that you have across those channels. So you need to really figure out your playbook. You need to look at, okay, what are we doing right? What are we doing, wrong? And how can social media continue to actually drive, conversion, drive traffic to our websites? How do we use it for amplifying our content marketing? How do we use it to share? How do we use it to sell, right? What is our social commerce strategy? I think those are things that every business owner, CEO, board member, CMO should be thinking about, product owners as well. Influencer marketing and content creator partnerships are here to stay. They're going to become more and more important. In 2023, brands can't rely on the content that they create themselves, right? It's pretty much like tooting your own horn. No one wants to see that. No one really cares about that. People really want to connect with the content that influencers are creating, that content creators are creating, right? So creating those strategic partnerships with the right type of influencers, with the right type of content creators is going to be key in 2023, especially as you engage sort of those cross-generational audiences. You really need to think through who are the right influencers, that can cater, and what platforms do I leverage them on, right? What type of influence do they have on each of the different platforms, right? What type of formats are they using? And how do we best translate our product offering, service offering, our UVP, our brand story, and get them to create that, sort of in a creative way. Customer retention. We're going into a recession, or we already are in a recession, but this is global, and the entire world is sort of looking at how do we cut budgets? How do we, save money? How do we, make sure that we've got a little bit of extra for those rainy days that are to come? And that means that you can't really sort of spend your way through customer acquisition, right? So marketing burn is going to have to reduce, because marketing is one of the key cost centers that is always slashed first anyway. So what does that mean for you? It means that you really need to focus on customer retention. It means that you need to make sure that you have a strategy around that, right? How do you retain customers? How do you entrench how they use your product? How do you make sure that you have cross and upsell strategies that are integrated in your customer experience, right? So not something that is totally separate, but how do you also use personalization, use data to drive all of those different things in order to really save on the CAC, customer acquisition cost side. AI and Web3. So I've talked a little bit about that, but they're going to continue to disrupt and shift digital marketing in 2023. I think, especially from the AI side, and I'll talk to that in more detail, we've seen major disruptions to sort of even agencies asking themselves, okay, so, do clients still need us? How do we position to say we can write superior content to ChatGPT? How do we bring in the knowledge, the experience, the years of doing this to actually show that there is still value for organizations to work with agencies when it comes to content marketing? On the Web3 front, NFTs have really sort of shaken up what digital marketing is. And I feel like as we move from Web2 to Web3, digital marketing is also moving accordingly. And there's a lot of changes that are, sort of coming in that space. A lot of brands that are already on that bandwagon that are using NFTs in many different ways. NFTs, especially the ones that have utility, tied to them, which basically means that they have some kind of function. So it's not just an image that is digital that you own, but it has function. That can be access to events. It could be access to sort of content that no one else has access to. It could be discounts. It can be anything that drives loyalty. And we're seeing many brands adopting these different types of strategies across Web3 and NFTs as a whole. Now here we are, ChatGPT and other AI solutions are really turning content inside out. So it's not just sort of written content, but also visual content. So you've got design tools like DALL-E that are really revolutionizing and disrupting design. And that could also lead to a lot of deep fakes, right? So all of this stuff that is AI driven has a lot of implications and sort of questions that come with it, right? What is the ethical, sort of background? You have schools that have banned ChatGPT and sort of, are now going back to paper-based examinations as opposed to computer-based examinations, simply because they don't know how to check whether this is written by ChatGPT or the student. Obviously, if the, sort of a discrepancy between the writing style is completely different, then you may be able to say, hey, you didn't write that. But at the end of the day, these are real problems that organizations are facing, right? Same thing in recruiting. So you have recruitment tests where you ask people specific questions that they need to write. They can just ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT gives them a great answer. You can't find that answer because it's not plagiarized, right? It's not a blog post that they've copied. It's content that is unique. And every single time you ask the same question to ChatGPT, ChatGPT actually gives you a different answer, right? So it's randomized. It's unique to, when you're asking that question, time and things like that. So it's also coming up with questions around policy, around regulation. And I think that's really where the interesting parts are going to be, where we also start seeing how market dominance, will be protected or not through regulation and policy. So I think it's a space to really, really watch. It's a space for every organization to really understand. So if you've got a marketing team, make sure that you are doing trainings around how to use ChatGPT and other AI-driven tools. Make sure that your team really understands the relevance and the benefits of using these tools, but also understands how important it is to actually have a strategy behind what it is that you're doing, right? Because what we're also going to see is that because it's now easier to create content, every Tom, Dick, and Bolanle are going to create lots and lots of content and write articles, blog posts, LinkedIn articles, ebooks, different types of content, right? And they're going to publish this content, which means that there's going to be a sort of global content saturation. Global content saturation means that it will become more and more difficult to position high quality content. It'll be more and more difficult for search engines to actually be able to give you the right type of results, right? When it comes to design, a lot of people are now asking, do I still need an in-house designer, right? Can't I just use design tools like DALL-E? And there are many other ones to actually, do my designs for myself. AI is also being integrated in social media. So we're seeing algorithm shift and really focus on driving sales and marketing content. And that in itself also means that your users may engage very differently with these platforms because suddenly they're very salesy. Suddenly the algorithms are delivering suggestions to them. You may also like this, and you follow this person, so you may want to see this. You bought this, so you want to buy this. And how do you position in all of that, right? It's really, really important to really think about how you can also leverage AI when it comes to sort of your social media marketing and sales. Then obviously there are other AI-driven technologies as well that we're seeing on the rise. So AI and risk management is becoming really big, as well as compliance, language processing, and translation. So they're amazing technologies. I saw a video of this sort of pair of glasses that helps you translate. So if I speak a language to you, that the glasses know, and you're wearing the glasses, you would see subtitles in the glasses that tell you what I've said in English, if that's the language that you speak. This means that when it comes to, sort of engaging with people globally, there's a lot going to change, right? Language is not going to be a barrier anymore, which means that there's going to be amazing potential for sort of global expansion of brands. Language is often a barrier of why you can't go into a new market, or not as easily as you could into an English-speaking market. And just educational content from brands and things like that are really going to leverage and benefit from sort of the AI and language processing. So I think AI in general is here to stay. It's a very, very exciting trend to watch and to follow. And I think for every business leader, board member, C-level executive, this is a topic to spend your January reading about and researching. There's a lot of great blog posts out there, a lot of really good articles, scientific articles as well that you can read. A lot of really great books have come out that focus on sort of AI and what that means for the world at large, and how that it's going to shape business, how it's going to shape marketing, how it's going to shape everything that we do, basically. And I would recommend to any kind of leader to really focus their time and effort into learning this in order to be able to really understand what the future holds in terms of strategies across digital, but across business as a whole. Now, engaging your consumers is another thing that's really, really important. So whether you're talking about content creation, content formats, or ads, consumer education has to be personalized. It has to be strategic in 2023. Generic content is dead. Consumers are 2.4 times more likely to trust user-generated content. So I already talked about influencer content, content creator content. So compared to other content that the brands are generating, right? That means that you need to make sure that your consumers, your users are creating content, and that there's also content that's created by influencers, content that's created by content creators, right? That have some level of following and that can engage your particular target audience. So it's really becoming important when you talk about attracting, engaging, and converting potential customers. So you have to be strategic about how you drive user-generated content in your marketing activities. How do you make sure, and this is not just across digital marketing, but across experiential. So if you have events, making sure that there are ways for that content to actually go viral, that people are creating, making sure that you have a strategy in how to find the content that other people are posting about your brand and reposting and amplifying that content, making sure that you have strategies around the different types of channels that people are using, right? And ensuring that you've got a really good way of tying all of that together. So community content is one sort of key way of engaging in 2023. Video, we've always said video is king. It's not going anywhere. But what we're seeing now is really the rise of live streams. So behind the scenes content that humanize your brand, real-time engagement, ask me anything sessions, live video, and what we're seeing here is that that's going to shape not just sort of service businesses, but also commerce. So we're seeing a lot of live stream selling where products are being demoed, people can ask direct questions and make purchases immediately, right? So that conversion is happening on live stream video. But also, as I said, the humanization of the brand and making the brand more real and authentic and accessible, right? And talking to the people behind the scenes, right? And making sure that people connect with who you are. And we'll talk a little bit about that, sort of importance of connection with your consumers as we go along, because there's also a really big, role that plays in your brand strategy. Click to message ads and conversational marketing. So we're seeing a rise of click to message ads, which are basically ads that don't just say, go to the website and read, or go to the website and watch a video, or go to the website and buy, they're basically saying, click here and we'll talk to you directly, right? And those are the type of ads that are becoming more and more relevant because consumers can ask questions. And a lot of the time, these ads either go to a chatbot or directly to customer service staff, depending on what the subject matter is, and obviously depending on how you've set up your marketing stack. But conversational marketing is where the actual conversion happens. And especially when you're in a business like professional services, you'll know that you do not convert on digital channels, right? The conversion happens in conversations that you have with people who are interested and people who really want to know more about what it is that you're offering. So it's really important to think about how you make conversational marketing a really big part of your brand strategy. SEO is evolving. SEO is search engine optimization. In 2022, we saw a shift towards sort of more human-centric algorithm-centric search engine optimization, which means that basically search engines such as Google, Bing, and all those other ones, they are taking more into consideration the human being behind the search query, right? So they're looking at what is it that this person actually is looking for and how relevant is the content, right? So we're going to continue to see search intent and relevance of content being key. Search engines are continuously enhancing their algorithms to understand the reason behind search queries. And they are categorizing intent based on informational queries, navigational queries, transactional queries, commercial investigation queries, and they're measuring the relevance of the content that is out there, right? So especially when it comes to this, sort of saturation of content, I think it's really, really important that we understand that the more content is out there, the less visibility we will have as brands, right? Which means that we really need to think about how do we position, right? How do we make sure that we have content that stacks? How do we make sure that we leverage gated content? How do we make sure that we're creating case studies? How do we make sure that we're creating ebooks and sort of content that is really, really robust and that will drive the right type of audience to your site. ChatGPT is also the new kid on the block. And like I said, a lot of the big tech search engines are shaking in their boots. We're seeing sort of scramble for investing into that area of AI and creating their own sort of ChatGPT engines. And why are they scrambling, right? So when you look at search engines like Google, for example, a lot of the revenue that they make as an organization comes from ads that are either search ads or ads that come up in your, when you're searching. They come up in different places and basically take you to the search engine, right? Or they're ads of companies that want to rank higher on a search engine. So if ChatGPT can give me a succinct response to whatever question I have, without me having to read 5 million web pages, right? So if I say, what are the 2023 digital marketing trends? ChatGPT will tell me what those trends are. And I don't need to go and read different articles across 5 different or 10 different sources in order to really understand what those trends are, right? I don't need to come into this webinar and watch me speak for an hour. I can simply get a response within seconds. And that response is usually more succinct and more detailed than what you would be able to pull together in 2, 3, 4 hours of reading regular search results, right? So that is the power of a tool like ChatGPT beyond helping you to generate content, right? It's the way that search is going to be done going forward, where, again, there's a lot of search intent that is being used to drive the responses that are coming out, right? And then people will probably use regular search engines to sort of just do comparisons and see, okay, is what this ChatGPT told me, is it correct? Am I seeing this across regular search tools? And at some point, when you know that it's always on point, you're going to stop asking regular search tools, right? So there's a big sort of loss of revenue and a big loss of customers that may come from that in the near future for a big search. SEO as a whole is also changing. So backlinks are taking a back seat simply because of this humanization of the algorithms. Long tail keywords are there for the win, and page load speed is going to play an even bigger role. So test your page load speed, look at how quickly it loads, right? Make sure it's mobile friendly and has been optimized properly and loads there as well. Because if not, those are things that will actually impact your search ranking. Also creating schema, whether these are FAQ schema or other types of schema within your content that help the search engine sort of categorize the content better and give the right type of content for particular search queries. That's really, really important as well. So you have to really look at those type of on-site optimization techniques because they're no longer nice to have. So you can build a website, but if you haven't optimized it, if you're not really investing into SEO, you're pretty much dead on arrival. So what are sort of the takeaways and recommendations? Digital marketing is going through a shift that's driven by AI, automation, personalization, Web3, data, and marketing technology. And it's a space that you have to really keep abreast with and be really aware of. You have to ensure that you understand the search intent of your target audience and develop content that is relevant to that. Brands have, and that means that you have to engage with your stakeholders, right? You can't develop content because you think that it's relevant to your stakeholders, right? You need to know, and the only way that you can know is by actually making sure that you've engaged with them. So these are focus groups, surveys, just testing different things out and seeing how much engagement does X versus Y. So A/B testing basically get. Brands also have to leverage community content, like I mentioned earlier, and they have to do that at scale. And they can only do that at scale by using influencers, content creator partnership. ChatGPT, definitely a space to watch. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it disrupts existing business models, how policy and regulation will try and sort of balance market domination in this case. Conversational marketing and search are also evolving and require really high levels of personalization and adoption to local contexts and realities. So you have to make sure that your content is tailored to your audiences at all time. Now we'll go to the next section, and if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll take all of those questions at the end of the session. But please, keep the conversations going. If you have any contributions, put them in the chat as well. I want everyone to learn. That's why we're here. And I'm hoping that also the people who will watch the replay are able to, sort of learn and leverage everything that is shared here. So we'll go into brand strategy and how brand strategy is evolving and taking center stage. So we'll talk a little bit about purpose, strategic ESG integration, a seat at the table being critical for brand strategy. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, so what is this brand strategy? Why are you bringing it into digital trends? And the truth is that any type of digital marketing or marketing, content marketing falls under brand marketing, and brand marketing is driven by brand strategy, right? So you have to have a proper brand strategy in order to actually do your digital marketing or regular, type of traditional marketing. Now, in 2023, brands will be more driven by their purpose, their values, their mission, vision, and also sort of the alignment to their sustainability or ESG pillars, right? So what does that really mean? It means that you have to lead with purpose. It means that the purpose has to be reflected in how you communicate, how you market, how you sell, how you engage with your customers and other stakeholders. So your product and services are no longer the exclusive focus. In fact, they really take the backseat here because you need to focus on the business relationship with your customers, with your vendors, with every other stakeholder. So whether these are your shareholders or regulators, it's really important that you really think about all of those stakeholders from a brand strategy perspective. your brand identity and brand personality matter. It's really, really important. This is how people sort of differentiate, right, between different brands. There are brands that are super impersonal, and then there are brands that are super funny, personal, and just really great to connect with. There are brands that are super educational, and that's why you're connecting with them. There are brands that really, really focus on their values, right? And a lot of consumers are looking for alignment on values, and that's really important for them. So they'd rather buy from a brand that has a particular set of values than a brand that is not communicating about the values that they have. Consumer involvement. So consumers want to be involved. They don't want a purchase-centric relationship anymore, right? It's not about, I have this, come and buy that, and then, that's the relationship we have. No, I want to be, as a consumer, part of the decision-making and not just consume. I want to be part of whether you continue a particular range of products or services. I want to be able to give input and feedback on the type of, sort of how the product makes me feel. I want to be able to tell you whether the product is good or bad. I want to be able to say, hey, this is what you could maybe add to this product to enhance it. When you're developing new products, I want to be part of that, right? And that is consumer involvement. And every brand has to really think about how that fits at the heart of their brand strategy. Agility is key, because consumer habits are changing, right? So we're seeing consumer habits really focusing on convenience. We're seeing them focus on, things like just availability, right? And how things can be customized. So if you're not agile and not really focused on sort of innovating constantly, then it's going to be very, very hard for you to actually engage and convert your target audience and actually have consumers. Community. So your consumers want to belong to a community and get added value by making a purchase, right? So if we look at a brand like Patagonia creates really sustainable clothing, and they have built this community of people who buy into high levels of sustainability, who want to save the planet, and they buy these clothes because of that, right? So you can see value alignment. There's a community. They've created consumer involvement because the consumers can also give feedback. The consumers are able to walk into their stores and get their clothes repaired. They have ways of recycling clothes. So it's really not about, sort of like fast fashion. This Patagonia brand is really about really slow fashion, about sustainable fashion, but also really about building community. And the people who buy Patagonia, they always sort of recognize each other, and they engage with each other, they support each other. So brands can actually do a lot. Doing good is another thing, right? So consumers want to know how your brand is contributing to a better world. The planet is in trouble. What is your brand doing, right? Are you planting trees? Are you, reducing your carbon footprint? Are you reducing your energy costs? What exactly are you doing to contribute to that better world, right? All of this is part of, your overall brand strategy. And I featured this in digital trends because I don't think that you can really utilize digital marketing properly without having a proper brand strategy in place. Now, ESG is also one of those really big topics. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. And it's on the rise. Stakeholder management is no longer about just consumers and shareholder communication. And CEOs are being challenged to really engage and give the brand a face. And importantly, a voice, right? That communicates those values, that communicates the purpose, that communicates how we do good, that communicates how you can contribute to doing good with us, right? And that again drives entrenchment. So you have to really think about, have you done your stakeholder mapping? Do you have stakeholder engagement strategies across the different stakeholders? So no longer just consumers and shareholders, but your vendors, right? How do you make sure your third-party vendors have the same ESG standards as you? How do you make sure that there's compliance? How do you communicate all of that? How do you engage with the community at large that you operate in? How do you make sure that you're really, sort of focused on all of the different stakeholders that are engaging with you. Messaging is key. So I already talked about sort of the values, the purpose, the mission, the vision, and that has to be communicated in really well thought through messaging pillars that are used for communication across board, and that also basically shape the communication and narrative at executive level. Executive profiling. So communications departments really need to focus on strategically positioning CEOs and C-level executives for meaningful engagements with the various stakeholder groups. So you need an executive profiling strategy that basically tells you how leadership is going to help position the brand, how leadership is going to become the face and the voice of the brand. So all the CEOs that are like, oh, I want to be at the back, I don't want people to know that I have this brand. The truth is that your consumers want to know who you are. Your consumers are interested in understanding how fair you are, right? So when you look at companies like H&M had a huge scandal, right, where the CEO is earning millions of euros, but paying less than minimum wage to the workers that they have in different countries where they produce, right? So you've basically created a scenario where people no longer want to be associated with your brand simply because the discrepancy is too high, right? All of this is public information because they publish their numbers, they publish, all of those type of things. But then they also, did a lot of blue washing where they basically sort of said, no, we pay fair wages, we do all of these things, we have benefits for our workers, but it just wasn't true, right? So closing that gap between saying and doing, right, is really important. So when we think about brand and we think about digital and we think about communication, we really need to look at how do we go from saying to doing to showing, right? And you want to show what you've actually done, not just what you're saying. And your leadership needs to sort of take that place and do that. Brand strategy and marketing have to have a seat at the table. So your board has to be involved because all of these things are really high level. They tie into your business strategy. They have to be aligned with your business goals. There has to be board oversight from a strategy perspective, from a risk perspective. So brand marketing really should have a seat at the table. And you have to look at it across marketing, across ESG and sustainability, across product and business entrenchment and how you drive that, right? Across customer experience. So it has so many different touch points beyond the sort of your visual brand identity, right? So there's so many important things that really are driven by brand strategy. And brand marketing has to become part of your business strategy. So it has to be an integral part of that. It can't be treated as sort of like that thing that you do on the side. It's a strategic investment. It's not a cost center. These are things that if you invest today and you build a solid brand based on a solid brand strategy, you will get a return on investment, not just next year, but for the years to come. You also have to leverage data, right? So you have to track the right metrics, make sure that you have performance metrics that you're tracking for your brand strategy, and that you're making decisions based on the data that's available. So what are the key takeaways? So the key takeaways here really are that brand strategy takes center stage and drives all marketing activities in 2023. The current marketing landscape demands innovation and testing. So you have to develop an agile approach to your marketing. You have to focus on data-driven decision-making. You need to track, you need to review, you need to tweak, you need to change your strategy as you get more insights. ESG will become an integral part of your brand strategy and will shape the way brands communicate. Brand strategy needs to have a seat at the table, and organizations really need to rethink how brand strategy and marketing reporting lines and governance structures are shaped within their organizations. Okay, so we've got a question here that says, where do we find the talent to drive this in our respective businesses? Is the talent readily available? What kind of costs are we looking at? So talent is a global problem, especially because a lot of these things are new, and a lot of these things are just, sort of emerging technologies. So that means that there are necessarily no courses and things like that available. I think what you really need to do as an organization is to, first of all, have a brand strategy that will help position you in a way that you attract the right type of talent, right? You want talent that is aligned with your values. You want talent that is ready to go the extra mile. You want talent that is focused on learning and growing, but you also need to give opportunities for them to do that, right? That means also embracing failure. So that needs to be part of your culture, it needs to be part of how you position yourself, right? In order to attract that type of talent that is ready to experiment, that is ready to come up with, sort of big, audacious ideas that are scary and where you're like, okay, this is a bit controversial, but we're going to try this out, right? So the talent is not readily available. I think what you can do is to work with agencies that have talent and that also have access to, sort of global talent, whether this is through, sort of them having access to global consultants or having global partnerships in place in order to bridge that talent gap. And then obviously there's learning and development that comes into play. So you need to have a robust learning and development strategy that makes sure that from the board level all the way down, your organization is constantly learning about these digital trends, and you're making sure that you've build that into your DNA, right? Because if you're not driving that as a culture, then, and you're not driving digital or data or brand strategy as your culture, then there's no awareness, and then it just simply doesn't happen, right? And then 5 years from now, you wake up and you're like, what happened? Why did we fail? So it's not just attracting the right type of talent, but it's also how do you nurture that talent? How do you retain that talent? How do you make sure that that talent really is paid well as well, right? So I always give the analogy that, a really lazy developer who, is freelancing can work 100 hours a month, right? Which is not a lot, and charge $10 an hour, right? So then that means that they make $1,000, right? Now, $1,000 with the current exchange rate is 750,000 Naira, right? 400 hours of work. A lot of people are looking at those type of options, right? They're not necessarily concerned about, okay, how much can we grow? How much can we learn? But I think there is a big chunk of people who will say, okay, you know what? I want to go into an organization where I have the opportunity to work on really big projects, where I have the opportunity to learn, where I have the opportunity to grow. I don't want to do menial work where I can charge $10 an hour, even though I can make more money, right? So I think it's really to also communicate the opportunities that are available within your organization from a learning and development perspective, from a growth perspective, from a perspective of the type of business that you do, the type of clients that you engage with, the type of growth that people can expect, and the way that you reward excellence within your organization. In terms of what does it cost? I mean, it really depends on what parts of this you're intending to do, and I'm happy to have sort of a more detailed conversation offline to talk about that. So the third part of this is data-driven strategies, and then just not nice to haves anymore, right? So we'll talk a little bit about personalization, data storytelling, data analytics, insights, and ESG. Again, you can see ESG is sort of like that recurring little theme that goes through it, because what we're really seeing is a shift towards sustainable business, which means that you really need to understand how ESG works in order to really be able to imbibe that within your business strategy and business practices. Data-driven strategies are not just nice to have. So personalization is here to stay. Data narratives are becoming more and more important. Data plays a big role in knowing your customer in 2023. It's out with the generic and in with segmentation and personalization. So personalization is no longer optional. The more skillful a business is at applying data to increase consumer knowledge and connection, the greater the return on investment. So there's research that shows that companies that excel at personalization generate 40% more revenue than those that don't, right? 40%, that's a lot. But it also is a big investment, right? Personalization doesn't happen overnight. Personalization is not just saying, hi, Nkem, this is for you, and then you're sending me stuff that is not relevant for me, right? You need to know who I am. You need to know my habits. You need to know what stage of my life I'm in. You need to know how much I earn. You need to know how many children I have. You need to know what type of car I drive. You need to know what I'm struggling with, what are my biggest challenges, and how can you help solve them, right? Because that's the only way that your communication will matter to me. So if you're a financial service institution and you're sending me information on, maybe taking out a loan to pay for university, not very relevant. My child is 7. Something that would maybe be more relevant would be offering me life insurance that can be paid into a student, trust fund, for example, right? So really thinking through how do you personalize and what does personalization mean within your organization? So it can be built on name recognition, location-based recommendations, and messages based on preference of the consumer, as well as the needs of the consumer. Understanding your data narrative and telling a story is also becoming more important. So brands have to develop a data narrative. A data narrative is basically just a written summary of a set of data that draws conclusion and makes a comparison to explain the meaning of the data in detail. So sometimes we visualize data, but that's not enough anymore. We really want to dive deep and really think about what story does our data tell, right? How do we tell stories that resonate with the audience, right? How do we tell stories that amplify our values? How do we tell stories? And this is where case studies are really great, right? Because you can use the case studies to showcase, first of all, your services, your product, your capabilities, the experience and the knowledge that you have within your organization. But you can also use them to really highlight your values, to highlight your purpose, to highlight how you're doing good, to highlight how compliant you are with ESG and other sustainability metrics. Using a mix of narratives and visualizations allows businesses to put their performance into context and helps executives and board members make informed strategic decisions. So those data narratives and visualizations are not just important for external communications, they're important for data-driven decision-making within the organization, right? So you need to make sure that you're turning data into insights and you're not just saying, oh, we've got lots of data and it's really great, because that doesn't help you. So data, everybody keeps screaming data, but what about the insights? And this is one area where I still see a lot of deficit, especially within Nigerian organizational, globally, and Pan-African organizations. 90% of the world's data, like I said in the introduction, was created in the last 2 years, and brands are struggling with platform silos. That means that your data is in one platform, and then you've got data in another platform. That data isn't talking to each other. There's no interoperability within the data. The data doesn't come together. So it means that you don't have a holistic idea of what it is, right? You've got data dumps that haven't been analyzed. They haven't been segmented properly. And that means that they're completely meaningless. So you can have data, but that doesn't mean that you've got insights. And if you don't have insights, you can't make data-driven decisions. So data on its own, very, very useless, really. You have to invest in unified data views in 2023. So businesses have to create unified data views and dashboards that assist executives and board members with data-driven decision-making and heightened risk oversight, right? So how do we make sure that we're seeing the right things at the right time? How do we build a data culture within our organization? So I spoke a little bit about, sort of building culture that drives digital. It's the same with data. You have to make sure that your employees understand, why do we need this data? Why do we have to, enter information properly? Why is it important that our data is clean? How clean is our data? Why is it important that we really understand what we're trying to do with all of this data? It's important because if you don't have a data culture, then you're not going to actually be able to get to that end goal that you've set. So what we're seeing is that companies with data cultures, are already seeing, higher returns on investment than companies that haven't invested in that. So that's one of the things that we think needs to happen in 2023 for a lot of organizations here on the continent. Self-service analytics and insights. So there's a need for, sort of data and insights being accessible real time and at the click of a button. You want to make sure that your business units have access to the data and they don't have to go to, Paul, the data guy, to get information about the data that they want to, analyze. They can access it through a dashboard. They can filter, they can search, they can create reports. They can see the data in an optimized manner, and they have input into how that data is generated, how that data is analyzed, what the data narratives are, how they tell the story, how the data is being visualized, and what they actually can do with that data, right? So it's really important across the business, whether it is to develop a better customer experience, or to enhance your product development, or to manage your overall risk appetite. Data being turned into insights and being available, at the click of a button is very, very important, and organizations need to invest in that, right? And this again takes us back to that talent question that came earlier, right? So my take on this is every single corporate, every single organization that requires data-driven decision-making, that wants to have data dashboards, needs to support the development of data analysts and data specialists, basically, right? Because if you're not supporting that, then who's going to work in your organization? Who is going to be able to do all of this work? You're now going to bring in global consultants, even though we've got a high unemployability and underemployability problem in the country. There are training organizations that are private that struggle with training people, not because they don't have the curriculum, but because most people can't afford the training, right? So can you create a partnership with those organizations in order to actually fund the training? That is a strategy that you need to look at from a sustainable, sort of talent pipeline perspective, right? What are you doing to build a sustainable talent pipeline? How are you helping the entire, sort of data analysis ecosystem to grow, right? Are you creating challenges? Are you creating hackathons for data scientists and data analysts? Is there actually really good, well-paid work that you're doing? Do you have research that people can work on, right? Can you get data analysts that are trying to find an internship to do little case studies for your organization? So you really need to start thinking about, okay, we need all of this, but how do we actually achieve it? And that's really key. Data will also enable successful ESG efforts. So they always say you can't manage what you can't measure. Data is only able to unlock and give, is now not only able to unlock and drive ESG strategies, but it's going to be an integral part of how you create a successful ESG strategy in 2023. So this is sort of looking at what are the global standards to drive ESG reporting, and what are the data formats, and how can we leverage that, right? How do we leverage data that is available from a global perspective, from competitors? Because a lot of, especially if you're a publicly listed company, you have a lot of this data that is available, but no one is really bringing it together into, proper reports. Data is going to continue to enhance how organizations advise and deliver services and products, but will also serve as a means to help mitigate ESG-related risk factors, right? So again, you need to really look at your ESG strategy and think about how do we leverage data within this, because that is the only way that you're going to build a sustainable business. So you have to make sure that all of that, is integrated and goes hand in hand, that you've got dashboards that enhance your ESG reporting across the entire organization. So the key takeaways here are really data plays a key role in engaging optimally with your customers. Personalization has to be integrated at the relevant customer touch points to deliver value. Tracking the right metrics is key. Board members and executives need to understand that metrics, what metrics that need to be tracked, and how those actually align to their organizational goals and growth plans. ESG data can give you a huge advantage in developing and tweaking your business strategy, driving consumer education and entrenchment, but also contributing to building a better world. Data meets storytelling as brands develop robust data narratives to support visualization of their data. And data is driven by people, which means that you have to invest in building a data culture. You have to invest in a good learning and development strategy. All of this is going to take a little bit of time, but you have to start accelerating, because this is going to become more and more important. Now let's go over to the metaverse, mixed reality, Web3, they're all here to stay. We're seeing especially sort of the marketing that sort of focuses on the younger generation, so consumer 5.0 or new consumers as they're called, is becoming more sort of immersed by XR, which is augmented reality and virtual reality or mixed reality, whatever you want to call it. And you're basically seeing that this goes across, sort of different digital platforms. It goes across, even in-store experiences, where the technology really enables, sort of humans being able to feel differently, to see differently, to experience differently. And the young generation is all for it, right? They're already in the metaverse on a daily basis. So they're expecting brands and brand experiences to be shaped by the things that they do and how they engage on a day-to-day basis, right? So commerce is going to be completely disrupted by immersive reality. Mixed reality is becoming a core part of the consumer experience, as well as institutional learning. So we're also seeing mixed reality being used in education quite a lot. And we're also starting to see it being fully integrated into social media experiences through avatars. Gamifying in-store experiences with social apps will also redefine retail commerce in the coming years. So we're seeing campaigns really being, sort of having to be tailored to your the true brand identity. So again, being authentic, having a purpose, having values, mission, vision, that then also align and resonate with the audience, and provide value to that audience, right? So the focus is no longer on advertising or selling or just, sort of bombarding people until they give in. We used to say you need to see something 7 times before you sort of purchase something. But the truth is that, that alone doesn't work anymore, right? I want reviews. I want to know what other people think. I want to know, is the influencer that I follow using this product, or do they use something completely different? How do I, sort of really know that what it is that you're doing is real, right? What are the different experiences? Are you using the channels that I use? Have you gamified, some of the experiences? Are the experiences immersive? Can I sit in my home and try on dresses by putting a picture of myself up and, sort of swiping the clothes on me, and then, it has a 3D, sort of version of me that can turn around and show me how this particular outfit would look on me, right? Those are things that retail needs to think about. So there's a lot to think about. The metaverse, Web3, crypto, NFTs has gone mainstream, and there's a huge shift happening that will really impact your digital strategy in many ways. A lot of big organizations are working on actually having standalone metaverse strategies, where they really think about what does our pathway into the metaverse look like? How do we integrate the metaverse into our existing brand strategy? Who are we catering to in the metaverse? How soon are we going to launch, our own, sort of either version of the metaverse? How do we tie into existing, sort of metaverse infrastructure? And how do we use this, sort of new platform to engage, attract, and convert? And how do we educate consumers that may not, be in the metaverse already or are skeptical to actually follow the brand there? When it comes to retail and luxury brands, we're seeing, them really finding a place in the metaverse very, very quickly. We're seeing that they are, sort of able to connect to that, sort of next generation of consumers and any other early adopters. Ethereum is the sort of cryptocurrency that is driving all of that. And, we believe that the app store of the future is going to be Ethereum based. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are not just digital art. They're playing a huge role in terms of how brand reward loyalty in, creating exclusivity in the luxury segment. We're seeing more and more NFTs having utility that gives access. So whether it is Gary Vee's Fly Fish Club membership NFT, or whether it is Time Magazine's Slices of Time collection, where each slice of time gives you access to the actual Web3 version of Time magazine for a particular amount of time. It gives you access to specific events. It gives you access to exclusive content. But you need to be a slice of time owner, right? In order to access that. So there is utility behind the ownership of that particular NFT. And I think there's a lot of room for, especially retail and platform businesses, to leverage this. There's also a growing talent shortage around Web 3.0. So again, from a sort of talent pipeline perspective, how do you play in that space, right? How do you contribute to the development of talent? And what we're also seeing is that big tech is really driving the metaverse. So the likes of Microsoft, Google, Facebook, or Meta, they all have internal projects and initiatives that are driving the mainstream adoption of the metaverse in the coming years. So it's here to stay. What is your company doing? What is your brand doing? How are you tying this into what you're doing? How are you even educating yourself, board members, executives, senior management, until all the way down on these different things that are happening within the metaverse, right? So that you even have an idea of how this can plug into your brand strategy. So key takeaways here are to invest in mixed reality experiences, especially if Consumer 5.0 is the next frontier, investing in developing expertise in everything metaverse. So this is not just technical expertise, but also sort of strategic expertise, and really building knowledge, right? Deep knowledge of use cases, deep knowledge of really understanding how can we use this in our own industry and field, investing in creating a metaverse strategy, investing in sort of that talent development pipeline, and making sure that you are also building the right skills internally, tweaking your learning and development strategy to include digital as a whole, involve your consumers and build experiences with their feedback. So basically, how do you create environments where agile and rapid prototyping are being used and that give you then sort of real insights and data on how to go about your metaverse strategy. Web3 also requires a content strategy, and it's not the same as what you're using for Web2. So you also really need to think about that. You need to think about where the people who operate within Web3 actually consume their content, right? What kind of content, what type of hashtags do you need to use? What kind of, sort of domain names do you need to have? There's a really big sort of world behind that Web3 that is very unexplored by most Pan-African brands. The crypto winter won't last forever. So a lot of people are still very skeptical, and they're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin has tanked. Yeah, so has the stock market, right? The truth is that there are companies that are building. They're building for DeFi, they're building for the metaverse, they're building other Web3 solutions, they're building blockchain-based solutions, and those are the ones that are going to win, right? So if you're not building right now, if you've sort of said, well, yeah, all of that's just not going to happen, it's not going to become mainstream, the truth is there are millions of people who are already engaged. There are millions of dollars of revenue that are flowing through the metaverse on a daily basis. The question is, are you going to be part of it? And if you're not going to be part of it, are you going to be existing in the next 5 to 10 years? And last but not least, we'll go over to technology and digital transformation trends. So we're going to talk a little bit about information architecture, automation, optimization, strategy, and agility that will drive digital transformation across African enterprises. So as I mentioned earlier, this particular section especially is really tailored to sort of 2023 technology and digital transformation trends on the continent. So, if you're not necessarily a brand on the continent, this may not be, that specific to you. You may still find things that you think, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting, but this is really to focused on African brands. So we're seeing African organizations embrace digital transformation, and the focus is slowly shifting from standalone IT projects to a more holistic approach that cuts across information architecture, automation, optimization, and strategy development, as well as implementation. So when it comes to information architecture, there are key areas that are affected cloud infrastructure. So a lot of organizations are currently setting up hybrid and mixed clouds. They're setting up their cloud strategy. They're building microservices that will run on the cloud in order to drive sustainability across their business. They are building super apps. They're building platform business models and API marketplaces. And I think that this is really a good indication of a very, very robust technology backbone that will drive businesses across the continent. We're also seeing a lot of automation. So whether this is robot process automation or, sort of just creating automation across customer experience or integrating really very strategic and robust marketing technology stacks using AI or machine learning. So something as simple as a chatbot is a level of automation, right, that enhances your customer experience and can really drive customer loyalty. It can drive customer engagement. It can help you really understand your customer. It can help you generate data that you can turn into insights and use to sort of tailor your marketing approach and your sales approach. Optimization is another key area. So this is from internal processes to customer experience optimization. African brands simply have to invest in this, right? We can't continue to have poor processes, to have a poor customer experience, because the truth is there are startups that are coming for us. There are startups that are disrupting every single industry, and they're building processes that are optimized. They are building customer experiences that are superior, and they're building for consumer 5.0. Strategy. We're seeing a lot more sort of IT consulting services, such as digital strategy, audits, digital transformation strategies on the rise. Same with data strategies, and cybersecurity strategies are also not left out. So, you really need to, if you don't have those things, make sure you have them. The best starting point is to have an audit that goes across everything. So a digital transformation audit that then helps you identify key areas that you need to address. Agile is the word of the day. Rapid prototyping and brand sprints are a new way to quickly design and test, iterate concepts before going to market. So the brands have to embrace those methodologies to stay winning. Sectors to watch out for, I would say, overall sustainability, right? We're seeing a really big shift in sustainable technology. So ESG compliance and ESG integration within the business driven by technology. We're also seeing a really big awareness across, businesses to say, hey, these data centers, the clouds, everything that we're putting together are actually contributing to our carbon footprint. So what do we do in order to actually reduce the usage? How do we ensure that we're more efficient? How do we ensure that we're really conscious about what our technology footprint is doing to our carbon footprint? Financial services, specifically decentralized finance, DeFi, is a sector that I think is not just going to disrupt traditional financial services, but also the fintechs that we have today. And I think it's a really interesting and exciting, sector to watch. Healthcare, we're seeing advanced in 3D printing that will allow organ printing very soon. Gene editing as well. We're seeing, all sorts of different technologies coming out of that space. mRNA, that was used for the COVID vaccine development, being used in cancer research. The first skin cancer vaccination is coming out for testing in 2023. So these are really, really very exciting things happening in healthcare, and they're all, sort of technology driven. Manufacturing, AI, big data are no longer, excluded from manufacturing. Same thing with farming and agriculture. They're totally embedded, and they help with growth. They help with scale. They help with, efficiency. They help with the amount of, produce and information that comes out of it. And obviously marketing, customer experience, automation, AI integration. We're also seeing a lot of, sort of great and exciting things coming out of the energy and utility sector. EVs, tokenized distribution, decentralized energy grids are, sort of really come to mind there. And just seeing how we can use a lot of this, sort of emerging technologies to really leapfrog where we are as a continent. So I think it's time for African policymakers and African leaders to really think about how do we use technology advances that the rest of the world has made and skip a lot of these steps that they needed as their learning curve, and how do we invest strategically into these different technologies in order to actually drive socioeconomic development and prosperity on the continent. Education is also one space that I think is very exciting. In 2023, I think we'll see more AR and VR and mixed reality integration. I think we're also going to see more, sort of use of big data. So I think it will be very interesting times. The key takeaways: digital transformation is no longer optional, and every organization that wants to be around in the next 5 years should have a digital transformation strategy. Information architecture, automation, optimization strategy, and agility will drive digital transformation across African enterprises. Global and interconnectedness means, the global interconnectedness means reviewing processes, supply chain transparency, ESG compliance, talent, and the overall digital strategy, right? So because we're in a global economy, it means your talent is global, it means your suppliers are global, it means that your ESG compliance is relevant on a global level, not just in countries. So even if your industry is not regulated and you're like, well, I don't need to comply, then try and get a loan from a foreign lender, right? And they'll be like, hey, are you ESG compliant? And suddenly it becomes a big topic, right? Almost all sectors will see significant technology-driven growth. African governments really have to think about how they create enabling environments and policies that encourage active digital transformation. We're not seeing a lot of investment into the digital economy. When you look at the Nigerian budget, for example, very low investment, but I do think that the private sector has always pushed and will continue to push. But in order to do so, the government really needs to create that enabling environment. It needs to create policies that encourage, that are friendly, that have incentives tied to them. And executives have to upskill and reskill. And every board should have a digital or technology professional on their board. So what's next? 2023 is here. How is digital going to shape your brand? I think this is the big question. And I just sort of lined out some questions that I think everyone should be asking themselves, right? Have you audited your brand? Have you audited your technology stack? Have you, do you even have a brand strategy? Do you have a digital strategy? Is your brand strategy or digital strategy part of your organizational fabric or DNA? Do you know what your biggest challenges are and how to solve them? Do you have clarity on your stakeholders, integrating ESG or DEI into your brand strategy and optimizing your overall customer experience and internal processes? How are you using data? What can you automate? And how do you humanize your brand and communication? Does your branding team, marketing team, technology team, cyber team, board and management have the right skills and knowledge, right? I think those are questions that everybody should be mulling over. And I think the last, sort of thing I want to leave you guys with is think about what is your learning and development strategy as a person, as an executive, as a board member, as a leader, not just for your organization, but for yourself. How are you going to learn about digital in 2023? How is that going to be a priority? What are the sources you're going to use to learn? How are you going to make sure that you make it an intentional, sort of investment bucket into yourself, right? And I think that's really, really important. So before I end and take questions, I just wanted to also talk about, some of the services that we offer at Futuresoft. We help with brand audit, strategy, optimizations. We do brand sprints. We help with integrated marketing communications, digital marketing. We can do your corporate branding, go-to-market strategies. We also do a lot of training. So this is executive training. We can also help train marketing teams. We also offer digital transformation services, specifically focused on doing audits and designing digital transformation strategies. And if you want to stay up to date with sort of news, trends, and updates, we have a bi-weekly newsletter that focuses on digital tips, trends. We share what we're reading. This may be a way that you can actually sort of plug into that learning that I was talking about. And this could be, you know, an integral part to your learning and development strategy as a person. So if you're interested, we'll put the link in the chat as well. But yeah, and now I'm going to go over and take any questions. And I would also like to say thank you for listening and staying on for this long. So if you'd like to ask any questions, you could put them into the chat. I'm also going to go through anything that may be missing here. Okay, the presentation slides. Yes, so I'm going to make these presentation slides available on SlideShare. And we're also going to publish the recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. So if my team can please put in our YouTube channel details so that people can subscribe, so that you get an alert when the video goes up, and then we'll also send an email with the slides and everything. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so if you have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer those questions. Do we develop software? No, we don't. We can, I mean, we build solutions. So we build web portals, we build mobile apps, we build websites, web portals, all of those type of things. So if that's what counts under software, then yes. I think software is a little bit of an outdated word at this point, right? Because you more sort of think about it as software as a service, or you know, sort of a platform as a service. So yeah, so it really depends on what you're trying to build. If you're you know, if you want to reach out, I will put our email address here, and then you can reach out to this this email address and, you know, send us an overview of what you're looking to build, and then we can let you know if that's something that we do. We also have partners that are, you know, sort of core focused on application development, and that may be useful for you, so we can pass you on as well. Okay, so we don't do any AI advisory or integration, but we can help with the strategy development for that, right? So if you have specific challenges that you are looking to solve across your brand, across your business, across your operations, we can look at those. A lot of the time, it's not only going to be an AI solution. It may, you know, have something to do with a solution that focuses more on optimization, a solution that focuses more on automating processes. So it doesn't always have to be AI. A lot of the time, you know, like, oh yeah, it's a new technology, we all want to have it. But the truth is, sometimes where you are, you're far, far away from even being able to integrate something like AI into your processes, right? And obviously there are a lot of existing AI platforms that, you know, you can simply subscribe to and leverage that will help with solving those, you know, those challenges that you face. So if you are interested, you can also send us an email on the email address that I put at the top as well. Yes, please do contact. You mentioned that data was generated. Okay, advice for a company at the beginning of their data journey. I think having a data strategy is really key. A lot of the time, we just start generating data and then it becomes too much, and then we don't really know, oh, what do we do with it? How do we leverage it? How do we use it? So really thinking through your data strategy, and that is driven by your business goals, right? So let's say you are looking to sign up double the subscribers that you signed up last year, right? How do you use the existing subscriber data to identify who these people are, where they are, when they signed up, you know, sort of what habits they have on your platform, if you have a platform, or what services they consume, what products they bought from you, right? And how do you then use that data to attract, engage, and convert the same target audience, right? So it could be as simple as that. It could be more complicated where, you know, you say, okay, We really need to understand these consumers so that we know what to cross-sell and upsell to the consumers to drive entrenchment, to drive, to be able to personalize the offerings that we have for the consumers, to be able to really increase the customer lifetime value. So at the end of the day, it really depends on what is it that you're trying to achieve. So usually when you create a strategy like a data strategy, you would look at what are your business goals in the short term, medium term, and long term? And then you would also look at, sort of how do you break that down into a little bit smaller action items. And for each of those, what is the type of data that you need, right, in order to achieve that? So for example, you want 50% more or 100% more subscribers. How do you achieve that? By leveraging the existing data. Do you even have the existing data, right? Or do you just know that you have sold 50 million naira worth of product, right? But you don't know who the people are. Maybe you have their name and you have their phone number, but you don't have anything else, or maybe the delivery address where you delivered, right? That can be an indicator, right? So if all of your deliveries are in Lekki phase 1, then that's an indicator that that's probably a good area to continue to focus on. Or it might be an indicator that you have somehow focused your marketing on that area without actually looking at other areas. So it's, again, what does your data tell you? What is the narrative behind the data? How do you visualize that data? How do you ask questions and get the data to answer those questions, right? So usually you need to work with different business units to really say, okay, what do you want to know, right? What would be the information that is really helpful to you in order to do your work better, in order to deliver on these business goals that we have? And then go and say, do we have the data that can answer these questions? And if we have the data that can answer these questions, what do we need to do to make sure that the data answers the questions, right? Are there trends within our data? Sometimes you analyze data and you see no trend at all. And this can be because you have a small data set. It can also be because everything about how you sell is completely random, right? And then you can now start asking, okay, would we do better if we had a strategy? Would we do better if we increase this? Which of these sales channels actually has the lowest cost, right? Because sometimes one sales channel has a much higher cost. So if I have a store, I have to pay rent, I have to pay the person who's sitting in the store and attending to customers, whether anyone comes or not. If I have an online shop, I need to pay for hosting. So there are different types of costs associated with it, right? So that means that each purchase is also associated with a different cost, right? A different conversion or customer acquisition cost. Now, what is that number, right? And do I maybe want to drive more people to my online store? Do I want to drive more people to my physical store? Do people spend more in my physical store when they get there, right? Can I convert people who bought online to say, hey, we also have this physical store, would you like to visit? Or is there a way to make that experience more immersive for them? Can I use mixed reality? Can I use different types of technologies to help with that, sort of sell? So data can help answer all of those questions. But you just need to really think about what is it that you're trying to achieve, right? So look at the end goal. This is my end goal. This is where I want to be as a business, and then work backwards and create a strategy and create also ways to collect that type of data for basically to solve that strategy that you have. I hope that answers that question. Okay, are there any other questions? All right, if there are no other questions, then I am going to say thank you very much for spending an hour and a half with me and my team. And thank you for learning with us. And yeah, we'll share the slides, we'll share the video as well. Feel free to share it within your network once you receive them. I think for me, one of the reasons why we do this is to really share knowledge that we have, share the insights that we have with African brands. So please share far and wide. And yeah, I wish you a fantastic week ahead. Thanks for spending some time with us on this Monday. All right, bye-bye.